All right, ready to dive into some DIY for the garden.
Let's do it.
Okay, awesome. So we're going through the Natural Gardener's Companion.
Yep.
And I know you're interested in building some raised beds and trellises.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm also kind of curious about garden art and, adding some personal touches to this space.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that idea. So let's start with the raised beds. The book's got a ton of information on those. One thing that caught my eye was how much it emphasizes the drainage benefits. Have you ever worked with raised beds before?
I have, yeah. And I think especially if you've got soil that's like heavy clay or tends to get waterlogged, it makes a huge difference. Having that control over the soil mix is it's pretty key.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's almost like you're building a custom home for your plant's roots, right?
Exactly, yeah. You get to create the perfect blend.
So the book recommends using untreated lumber for the frames, like cedar or redwood.
Yeah.
Any particular reason for that?
Well, they're naturally resistant to rot and insects, so you don't have to worry about using those chemical treatments that could, potentially leach into the soil.
That's a good point, yeah. Being eco-friendly is always a plus.
Definitely.
Okay, so we got the frame sorted, but what about weeds? I feel like they always find a way to sneak in, no matter what you do.
Oh, for sure. But the Natural Gardener's Companion actually has a kind of cool trick for that. They suggest layering cardboard under the landscape fabric.
Cardboard? Really? Okay, tell me more about that.
Yeah, it's called sheet mulching, and it's supposed to be super effective at blocking weeds. And as it breaks down, it adds that organic matter back to the soil.
Huh, interesting. I never would have thought of that. So we've got the frame, the cardboard, the fabric. What about the actual filling for the bed? What does the book suggest?
Pretty standard stuff, actually. Topsoil and compost, good mix.
Makes sense. Gives the plants all the nutrients they need. Now, I'm all about maximizing space, especially since I've got a small urban garden. Any tips for that?
The book had a pretty neat idea about that. They suggest creating storage space underneath the raised bed.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah, you could build shelves or compartments for tools, pots, extra soil. Really practical.
Okay, I'm definitely adding that to my list. All right, so raised beds are a go. Let's talk trellises. I love the look of climbing plants, but man, they can get unruly.
Oh yeah, for sure. But that's where trellises really shine. They not only support the plants, but they also have other benefits too.
Like what? Fill me in.
Well, for one, better air circulation helps prevent those fungal diseases. And of course, they add that vertical element to the garden, draws the eye upward, adds different dimensions.
Makes the space feel bigger, right?
Right.
Especially for smaller gardens.
Exactly.
Okay, so building one, what materials do I need?
For the basic structure, wooden stakes or metal poles work great. And then for lighter plants like beans or peas, you can just attach some wire mesh, netting, or even strong string.
Okay, that doesn't sound too complicated. But what about heavier plants, like tomatoes or cucumbers?
Good point. For those, you'll want something sturdier, maybe an A-frame or a tower trellis, something that can really hold the weight once those veggies start coming in.
Right. Got to make sure it can handle those juicy tomatoes. Any other tips for building a trellis?
Oh, yeah, one important one, placement. The book emphasizes setting up the trellis before you plant. You don't want to disturb those roots later on.
Smart move. Always better to plan ahead. Okay, so we've covered the practical side of things with the beds and trellises. Now, I'm ready to get creative. What's the Natural Gardener's Companion say about garden art?
It's all about personalizing the space, making it your own.
I love that. What kind of DIY projects are we talking about?
Well, one idea that caught my eye was painted rocks. You can get some acrylic paints, decorate them with patterns, maybe even turn them into little garden markers.
Oh, that's cute and easy, too. I bet kids would love that. Speaking of markers, any other ideas for those?
The book mentions using old wooden spoons, sticks, or even flat stones. Paint them, carve them, whatever you like.
Oh, I like that. It adds that homemade touch,
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got markers. What about something to create a focal point? Add some ambiance.
Have you ever thought about a water feature?
Oh, yeah. Like a little fountain or something.
Even something simple can make a big difference. A container, a pump, some water plants. It adds that tranquility,
I love that idea. The sound of water is so soothing.
And it can attract wildlife too, which is always a plus.
Right. Okay, last question. What about recycled art? Any cool ideas for repurposing old stuff in the garden?
Oh, absolutely. The Natural Gardener's Companion is all about that. Old garden tools, metal objects, anything that speaks to you, really.
So it's like, see the potential in everyday objects and turn them into art.
Exactly. Let your creativity run wild. That's what it's all about.
I love that. All right, that's a great place to wrap up this first part of our deep dive.
Welcome back. Ready for more DIY garden inspiration?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm already jotting down ideas from our last chat about raised beds and all that. Now I'm kind of curious about garden decor. Adding those little touches that make it feel extra special.
Yeah, I hear ya. The Natural Gardener's Companion actually has a whole section on that. One idea I thought was really cool was a mosaic pathway.
Ooh, a mosaic pathway. That sounds pretty fancy, but also like a lot of work.
It's not as hard as you might think. They suggest using broken tiles, pottery pieces, even colorful stones. You just arrange them however you like and set them in mortar.
Oh, that's kind of cool. Like you can use all kinds of recycled stuff, right?
Exactly. Broken dishes, old mirror pieces, whatever you've got lying around. Gives it that unique touch.
Love that. Okay, so mosaic pathways on the list. What else did the book have?
This one was interesting. A garden mirror.
A garden mirror. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, basically you hang a mirror somewhere strategic, like on a wall or fence. It can reflect a nice view or make the space feel bigger, you know?
That's clever. Especially for smaller gardens. What kind of mirror would you use?
Honestly, almost anything works. An old window frame, a vintage mirror, even just a piece of mirrored glass. Just make sure it's weatherproof.
Right, makes sense. Okay, now I'm thinking about lighting.
Oh.
Especially for those summer evenings in the garden, Does the book talk about that at all?
It does. Solar lanterns were one idea they mentioned. Eco-friendly and super pretty.
Oh, I love solar lanterns. Are they hard to make?
Nope. You can just buy the solar lights and then get creative decorating the jars or containers they go in. Paint them, wrap them in wire. Go crazy.
That sounds fun. I might even try that with my kids. What about like string lights? Those are always so cozy.
The book mentions those too. They suggest putting battery-operated fairy lights inside mason jars and hanging them up.
Oh, that's such a cute idea, like little fireflies in the garden. Okay, last question on decor. What about birdhouses?
Oh yeah, there were tons of birdhouse ideas. You could do a classic wooden one, a gourd birdhouse, even something modern made from recycled materials.
A gourd birdhouse. That's kind of different. Might have to try that one.
Go for it. Just remember, when you're building it, make sure the entrance hole is the right size for the birds you want to attract.
Good point. Don't want to make it too cramped for them. All right. I think we've covered a lot of ground with the decor. I'm feeling super inspired.
That's awesome. That's what it's all about, right? Taking these ideas and making them your own. Now, what do you say we switch gears and talk about plant propagation?
Plant propagation.
Yeah.
Okay, I've always wanted to learn more about that. It sounds kind of mysterious.
It's not as complicated as it seems. It's just about creating new plants from the ones you already have.
So instead of buying new plants, I can make my own little plant babies.
Exactly. And there are a bunch of different ways to do it. Cuttings, dividing roots, even growing from seeds.
Wow, okay. Tell me more about cuttings. How does that work?
That's one of the easiest methods. You just take a cutting from a healthy stem, snip off the lower leaves, and then stick it in water or some moist potting mix.
And then you just wait.
Pretty much. Eventually, you'll start to see roots developing.
Cool. What kind of plants can you do that with?
Lots of houseplants are easy to propagate from cuttings. Pothos, spider plants, succulents, and even some herbs and shrubs.
Interesting. What about dividing roots? What's that all about?
It's good for plants that grow in clumps. You dig them up, carefully separate the roots, and then replant each section.
It's like giving them a fresh start, huh?
Yeah, exactly. And it's a great way to get more plants for your garden without spending any money.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so cuttings and dividing roots. Now, what about growing from seeds? That feels a little more intimidating.
It can be a bit trickier, but it's so rewarding to watch something grow from a tiny seed.
True. Any tips for someone who's like a total beginner at seed starting?
Definitely. The Natural Gardener's Companion recommends using good quality seeds and starting them in a sterile mix.
Okay, makes sense. What about light and water? How do you handle that?
Most seeds need warmth, moisture, and light to germinate. You can create a mini greenhouse effect by covering the trays with plastic wrap.
Oh, smart. And then once they sprout, you transplant them.
Yep. Once they've got a few leaves, you can move them to bigger pots or out into the garden.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get the hang of this. Wow, plant propagation is a whole world.
It really is. It's like having this secret superpower to multiply your plants.
I love it. All right, so we've covered a ton of ground with propagation. What else is in store for us in part 3?
Well, we're going to dive into natural pest control, homemade fertilizers, and all sorts of other tricks for creating a healthy, thriving garden.
Awesome. I can't wait. All right, back for more. We've covered so much ground already, but I'm really excited to dig into the natural gardening solutions the Natural Gardener's Companion talks about.
Yeah, it's a whole other world, right? Like how to keep your garden healthy without resorting to, all those harsh chemicals.
Exactly. That's what I'm most interested in. So,
Right.
what does the book say about pest control?
Well, first and foremost, it emphasizes creating a balanced ecosystem, like attracting beneficial insects to your garden.
Oh yeah, like ladybugs. Those are good.
Oh,
picks.
for sure. Ladybugs are like avid eating machines.
That's awesome. So instead of spraying, I can just invite a ladybug army.
Pretty much. And it's not just ladybugs. Lacewings, praying mantises, even some types of wasps are great for pest control.
Huh. Interesting. Okay, so how do I get all these beneficial insects to hang out in my garden?
The book suggests planting a variety of flowers that they're attracted to. Things like yarrow, dill, cosmos. They provide nectar and pollen.
So it's like setting up a buffet for the good guys.
Exactly. And leaving some areas a bit wild, like a pile of leaves or something, gives them shelter.
Okay, that makes sense. But what if the pests are already kind of out of control? Are there any natural solutions I can try them?
Oh, yeah, definitely. The book has a ton of recipes for homemade pest control sprays.
Okay, now you've got my attention. What kind of recipes are we talking about?
One that seems pretty easy is a garlic spray. You just crush a few cloves, soak them in water overnight, then strain it and add a little dish soap.
Garlic spray. Really?
Yeah.
That actually works.
Apparently. It's supposed to be really effective against aphids, mites, whiteflies, all that good stuff.
Wow, okay. I'm up to try that. What else does the book recommend?
Neem oil is another popular one. It's extracted from the neem tree, and it's got both insecticidal and fungicidal properties.
Neem oil. Yeah, I've heard of that. How do you use it?
You mix it with water and a bit of dish soap and just spray it on your plants. It disrupts the insect's life cycle so they can't feed or reproduce as easily.
Huh, that's pretty cool. Okay, so pest control is covered. Now, what about fertilizing? I want to, keep my plants healthy, but I'd rather avoid those chemical fertilizers.
Oh, I totally get that. The book has a whole section on homemade fertilizers, too.
Okay, lay it on me. What's the secret recipe?
Well, one that I'm personally excited to try is compost tea.
Compost tea? That sounds interesting. What is it exactly?
Basically, you steep compost in water, and it creates this nutrient-rich liquid that you can use to feed your plants.
So it's like actually making tea for your garden.
Pretty much. It's full of good bacteria and all sorts of nutrients that your plants will love.
Awesome. How do you use it?
You can either pour it directly on the soil or use it as a foliar spray.
Okay, that sounds pretty simple.
Hmm.
Any other fertilizer recipes that caught your eye?
Oh, yeah, there were a few. One uses banana peels.
Wait, what? Banana peel?
Yeah, you just dry them out and then grind them into a powder. It's a great source of potassium, which is really good for plant growth.
Mind blown. I'm never throwing away a banana peel again. What about eggshells? I've heard those are good for something too.
Yep. Eggshells are a good source of calcium. You can just crush them up and sprinkle them around your plants. It helps prevent blossom end rot in tomatoes and peppers.
Man, it's amazing how much stuff we just throw away that can be used in the garden.
Mhm.
I'm really loving this whole natural gardening approach.
It's pretty awesome, isn't it? Like taking care of your garden and the environment at the same time.
Totally. Well, this deep dive has been incredible. I've learned so much. Thank you.
You're very welcome. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. I hope you have a ton of fun putting all these ideas into practice. And remember, gardening is all about experimenting and finding what works best for you and your space.
So true. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive, everyone. We'll get you next time with another fascinating topic.